Here's your reminder. Tell Jessica you love her.
What the hell has happened?
Andy, tell me you set that for yourself.
I set that for myself.
Is that like Alexa reminders?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how those really work. Does that going off count as Jess hearing you tell her that
Oh,
you
no,
love her?
no. Yeah, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I always get up and use the bathroom around 7.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, that's me doing the reminder. Not that I really need a reminder. I just thought it was fun.
I couldn't tell what would be funnier if you had to remind yourself or if she said it for you
Yeah,
so that she would remind you.
Insert quarter for next reminder.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Brad Guy and His Super Friends. I'm your host, Brian Lebig. Joining me for this episode is someone who wields his own scepter, Andy No Note Stoles.
What's up, podcast people?
Next up, he pulls double duty as himself and his evil doppelganger, Josh Zorch.
Duty.
And lastly, he graduated from college with a PDF in feudal Japan, Ian Leidick.
It's always Ian Leidick and never how is Ian Leidick.
That's existential.
Oh, do you one better? Why is Ian Leidick?
I thought that too, and I couldn't figure out exactly how to segue there, so I'm glad you got there. All right, so on tap for this one, we are doing another Rewind Theater. So if you are new to this series of episodes, it's more or less an excuse for us to go back, revisit some older comic book movies that we either haven't seen or haven't seen for a while. Our format for these has been to start with some of the comic book history for the movie that we're on. Since all the movies we were choosing for Rewind Theater are based on comic books or graphic novels. Josh will give us that background when we get there. After that, we'll talk about some of the people involved with transitioning that property into a movie. We'll go over budgets, box office gross, ratings, if it's first time watch or rewatch for any of us. Before we get into discussion, we'll throw out the spoiler alert, and we'll get to a 60-second summary, which one of us has volunteered to do ahead of time. Our main discussion when we get there will consist of 5 categories: directing, characters and actors, story, soundtrack, and special effects and explosions. We're giving ourselves 10 minutes on the timer for each of those categories to try to keep us on track. Once we get through all of the topics, we will end the discussion with the movie rating and see what everybody thinks and if the movie holds up. That's more or less the question we try to end with. Finally, to take some pressure off of us, and we leave it up to the Wheel of Fate.
The Wheel of Fate!
What movie we are watching next. So if you've listened to the past couple episodes, you know that we have started doing 3 franchises and 3 standalone movies. And we're going to try to keep that format, see how it goes ongoing, and if we need to switch it up sometime later, we can do that. Either way, by the end of the episode, we'll spin the wheel to see what we're watching next. So at the end of our last episode, which was 2019's The Kitchen, the wheel has brought us back to another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. So we are doing 1993's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. For this episode. This is our 3rd Turtles movie, obviously. Since this is the first time that Josh will be able to give us the summary, we weren't doing the comic book background. We weren't doing that when we did it the first time for the first movie. We didn't have that prepared for the second movie. So 3rd time's a charm. We're gonna do it for the 3rd one. So Josh, whenever you're ready, you can feel free to teach us some stuff.
That was very generous of you to also say we didn't have it ready and not throw me under the bus there. It's appreciated, Brian.
Live and die by the group.
That's why you're a super host. Gentlemen, the Turtles of the Teenage Mutant Ninja variety, created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird in 1984, bought by Viacom in 2009, published National Comics for 30 years. Since its inception, has spawned 6 theatrical films, 5 television series, several live tour entertainment experiences, numerous video games, and a wide range of price-to-own toys and merchandise. Did I forget anything?
No?
It's pretty extensive, right?
The manga.
Do they have that?
Yeah, they made a manga based on this movie in Japan.
Wait, this one specifically, not any other
yeah,
ones, just
because
this
this
one.
one
They
takes
did.
place in Japan.
Yeah. It definitely isn't. That wasn't, obviously entirely comprehensive, but it just initially gives you, the first impression of how far-reaching this IP was able to go over so long. So as I stated, it was dreamed up by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. They started a self-publishing comics company called Mirage in the early 80s. About a year after that is when they started publishing the Turtles. They were, sort of the conceptual drivers at the beginning, and within a couple years, they brought on a few other people, more or less to help with the workload, not necessarily just to take the creative reins, although that, eventually happened as well. So, as far as I can tell, within, say, 2 years, there's a core group of about 6 creators, Eastman and Laird, along with letterer Steve Lavinge, or Steve Levine, perhaps, that joined in 84 as well. The year after that, Ryan Brown comes on as an inker, and in 86, Jim Lawson joins as another artist, a penciler, and then cover painter Michael Dooney. And it seemed like, from what I could see, the core group of these 6 really were the driving force on the property for a good number of years. The comic did run, for the most part, for almost 30 years. Towards the end, there were definite big gaps in between issue releases. But as far as I can see, the last new direct comic of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was published in 2014, which is way later than I would have guessed. As I mentioned in the beginning, current ownership of the IP does belong to Viacom. From what I could see, it looked like by that point, I think Eastman may have either maybe bought out his partner or to some degree, but it seemed like the way it was characterized is that the sale of the IP to Viacom, and more specifically really to Nickelodeon under that branch, was facilitated by him. And then the same year, Mirage Comics themselves actually shut down. So after like 35 years, they were just done.
I feel like I remember too the two
25
creators
years.
sort of having not getting along at some point, like diverging and not really talking for a while. But I don't remember what the rift was.
Wasn't it the mature content? I thought, like when the Ninja Turtles originally came out, it was very it was almost gory.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and so I think one of them was like, well, if we're gonna get this to each American household, like we need to sort of kidify it, and the other one was like, no, gore, like this is what we're in it for.
There was, you guys, some of you at least, probably watched this. Wasn't there an episode of, I think it was The Toys That Made Us? Or
yes, that's the one that's
that was
jogging my
around Turtles?
memory. Yeah.
Because I know they did a couple series. They did Movies That Made Us. I forget if they did television shows, but I know they did movies and toys. And I think it was toys that they did an episode on the Turtles. And some of that background, I believe, was covered at that point. That one of the creators, seeing the success of adapting it in a kid-friendly cartoon way, saw the commercialization and the potential that gave. And yes, there was butting of heads with the other creator in wanting to keep the material. I mean, and I think that, honestly, since we're talking about the films, that manifests directly in the tone difference between the first 2 movies.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You could easily say that is a actual visual illustration of that. The comics, even though there's a 30-year history, the overall number of issues is actually far less, I think, than one would suspect exists for that kind of time frame. As volume 1 of Turtles is considered. That ran from 1984 to 93, and that had the biggest, the most turnout in them. So there's 62 issues along that 9-year stretch. The next 2 years, Volume 2 comes out, starts in late 93 to 95. That's only 13. 96 to 99 is Volume 3. That's 23 issues. And then from 2001 to 2014, only 32 issues were ever published in, a 13 to 14 year gap there, or stretch. So all in all, there's, really only about 130 issues of Ninja Turtles.
Are those that's only published under Mirage? Or
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Because there's a new label publishing current, like, ongoing Turtles right now.
IDW?
Correct. They're up to issue 116 as of this month.
Because they're the like, I've gotten some comics from them that they do the cross, like I've got like Ghostbusters and Turtles crossing over, and I know that was an IDW comic.
Yeah, they also did a couple years ago the Batman Turtles crossover.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew that was newer stuff, so okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And that probably came with the split, as terms of the acquisition by Viacom. Eventually, they also, they really just bought the IP entirely outright.
Mm-hmm.
They own it all. So eventually,
IDW didn't start publishing it till 2 years after the IP sale.
Yeah, that makes sense. As far as the basis of the world itself, there's a few sources that I was able to dig up in which the creators routinely cite several specific types of other existing properties that they kind of admit that they just melded together. They took elements of them and put them together. The most direct and simplest one to pull is around that time, like late 70s, early 80s, Marvel's New Mutants. And they just basically borrowed the simple idea of mutation and what can we do with that, what occurs to us. They're young. That element definitely comes from that side of it. There's a Canadian comic created by cartoonist Dave Sim called Cerebus, Cerebus, that ran, this is pretty incredible. It was a comic book, ran from 1977 to 2004. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
About the main character is an anthropomorphic aardvark. So they had been familiar with it for 7 years by that point, 6-7 years. And so they just anthropomorphize a different animal.
Yeah.
Several different animals. Then the next two are interesting to me, I think. They both have Frank Miller draws to them and ties. The third piece here is a property called Ronin. This is a 6-issue limited series written and drawn by Miller and colored by somebody else. Ran in 1983 and 1984, and I think this is where the samurai shogun idea of mashing that culture up with a modern American metropolis comes from. Then maybe to some the most well-known connection is Marvel's Daredevil. Stylistically, also pulling from Frank Miller. If you look at things like Sin City and his own stuff that he prefers to illustrate, that he also writes, that is entirely his style. Black and white illustration, it's inked. There is no coloration to it.
Yeah.
And sort of from a Clerk's perspective, one might be able to argue, did Eastman and Laird go the black and white direction because of that preferred style, or because it's more expensive to pay someone to color or take the time to color, pay for extra printing, etc. So there might be a little bit of a debate there, but at least stylistically from those sources you can kind of see where they're drawing from. this research also helped clarify some things for me. I, in the last couple of years, came to think that the ooze that creates the turtles and Splinter was actually, in the minds of the storytellers, directly citing the incident of Matt Murdock being blinded as a child, and that the exact same chemical incident actually leached
Oh.
into the sewer and exposed them. And I
Yeah.
I should have known better and looked into it, because I always thought they were not part of Marvel. There's no way
Right,
they would
right.
have been allowed to get away with that. So they spun it a little bit, and they kind of ripped it off in a way, but um so the origin story for Daredevil is that he's a young child. He's just walking through his neighborhood, through the city, of Hell's Kitchen. There's a chemical truck that is involved in an accident. Something goes wrong. Chemicals are released from the truck. They expose. His eyes get exposed to them. It blinds him, but gives him enhanced other senses. On the Turtles side of it, their story is set up where, and we're gonna tie this to the next detail, an old blind man with a walking stick is walking across the street. He doesn't see that a big heavy truck is coming. A man tackles him out of the way, causing the truck to swerve. The motion of the truck releases a canister of chemical, which hits that man who saved the blind man, hits him in the face, in the eyes, injures him, but doesn't do anything to him in the way that it did Matt Murdock.
Yeah.
But then that canister somehow deflects off of the man's head and hits a young boy who just walked out of a pet shop, witnessing the whole thing, who is holding a fishbowl, effectively, with 4 baby turtles. The canister hits the fishbowl, shatters it. They all get swept down into the sewer grate right below. The canister breaks. Turtles in the sewer. Ooze on the sewer. And it's all told from Splinter's perspective.
Mhm.
That he just happened to be around to witness it. So there's your creation of the Turtles. So they took some parallels and they basically, it's kind of ripped it off in a way. I guess you could maybe say that they, paid tribute to it by doing that, but they're really lucky they didn't get sued.
Yeah, I don't think I realized it was that close to the Daredevil origin.
Yeah, I mean, and the other things that they just lifted directly, there is a character named a blind man in Daredevil named Stick.
Mm-hmm.
You have a blind man with a stick crossing the road in the Turtles. Instead of Stick, you end up with Splinter as the mentor. And the easiest one, of course, in the Daredevil, you have the secret ninja organization from Asia called The Hand. And in the Turtles, you end up with the Foot.
I don't think I ever put that connection together either. But it's so obvious when you say it. But didn't think about that ever.
Those two I had heard a couple of years ago, probably as I got more familiar with Daredevil itself, more or less from getting into like the Netflix show and whatnot. But yeah, that's, I think, as much of the relevant background as I think we'll get. I tried to honestly find if there was anything that would state whether any direct storylines or comics influenced Ninja Turtles 3, and nothing was speaking to it except, and I say this loosely, there's a couple trivia points shared on IMDb Trivia that point to some storylines, specifically one called, it's like a 2-issue arc, I guess you'll call it, called Masks, in which a character called Renet, Renet, travels back to feudal Japan to fight evil shogun, and there's samurai battles and whatnot, and like there's a time scepter mentioned from another user. But I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt, just because like I said, like basic research searches didn't directly quote these things, and
Right.
I don't have access to the comic books themselves to verify that, but could be the case.
Fair.
Last thing I'll wrap up with is, do you guys remember when I saw this description again of the Turtles origin story, and the article I found actually had, like, they copied the comic book page with it, so it's kind of giving you the narrative with the pictures along it, and it's describing the canister flies off, the truck that swerves hits the guy in the head, somehow then makes it, like, before it hits the ground, hits this fishbowl that this kid is holding, breaks, and everything ensues. That reminded me of something that I've not thought of since I was 7 years old, which is, I'm pretty sure that in the cartoon, one of the first episodes, maybe even the first one of the original cartoon, because they obviously, there's some imagery to that they're not going to put in a kid's show and they're going to adapt and whatnot. I'm pretty sure that the way that they explain that whole scene is that a dumb little boy walks out of a pet shop and literally trips on the sidewalk 2 steps outside the door, falls on his face, and the fishbowl just breaks on the sewer grate and the turtles are lost. And that's it.
Yeah, see, I feel like I have some sort of mental imagery of a cartoon-looking kid with a fishbowl of turtles, but that's as far as my memory goes. So I don't remember what either one of those could work for me. Like, either one I feel like would fit, but I don't know. I don't remember how it goes without watching the show.
Same, and I don't know if it's available. Users, if you or listeners, if you have access to the original Turtles cartoon anywhere, do us a favor, throw on the first episode and tell me if I'm completely misremembering this. Granted, I
Maybe one of
haven't
those,
seen
like,
it in 30 years, but
one of those things where, like, we're not sure if our memory creates it for us to fill in the gap, or if it actually ever happened and we're actually had seen that at one point or another.
very true. And I just, if I'm even remotely on base, just the image of this, I'm sorry, kind of dim, pathetic little kid, where, like, the whole thing gets boiled down to a dumb child trips on the cement 2 seconds after leaving the pet shop with the turtles he just bought, and that's how they explain how it all happened.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not going to do it now because we're recording, but maybe after the show I will try to just YouTube, like, Turtles origin cartoon and see if that pops up on YouTube or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that wraps your comic book, right? We'll transition
It
to
does.
movie stuff. Okay. All right, so who was involved with transitioning this property into this movie? So we have Stuart Gillard is the director and sole writer for this movie.
Oh, I knew it.
IMDb does not list a lot of movies that he's directed, but he has directed a lot of TV, including episodes of Charmed, the original and the reboot, 90210, Jane the Virgin, and Beauty and the Beast were some of his longest running. And this is not, like, in any way affiliated with the Disney property. This is the CW version of Beauty and the Beast.
So he was allowed to work after this.
Yes. Yes, he was.
But as we saw, some of the writers and director of the first 2 Turtles were not.
Yes. I mean, he hasn't done really movies since this
Still.
movie.
Yeah, those people had nothing professionally
Yeah.
after that. That feels like a little bit of an imbalance to me, but
I mean,
Go ahead.
writing credits, he only has one other credit after this movie. And that's another TV series for which he wrote 2 episodes. That's it. So writing definitely went down the hill after this. But I mean,
He
prior
only got
to
one
this,
writing credit.
what was that?
He only got one writing credit. The 2 credits are for creator.
Oh,
Like,
that's
what do you
right.
even give him 2 writing credits?
For the All Souls show that came after Turtles, you are correct. He has 1 credit as the creator and 1 credit as the written by creator for the pilot episode. One of his longest running writing credits was 33 episodes for the Sonny and Cher show. Don't know what kind of bearing that has on this, but hey, you know,
wow.
it's on IMDb. So the cast for this movie includes, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name again, Elias Koteas. Does that sound correct?
I guess as close as we'll ever get.
Okay. So he was not in Turtles 2. He was absent from Turtles 2. We got Keno. So now we lost Keno, and we got him back as Casey Jones, and he's pulling double duty as Casey Jones and Wit, which I think actually makes him the top billed actor in this movie. He shows up in the credits as the top cast member.
Top of the call sheet.
Yeah. Paige Turco returns as April from the last movie. Stuart Wilson is there as Walker the baddie. Sab Shimoan as Lord Norinaga. Vivian Wu as Mitsu. And the Turtles all have 2 people associated with them. One for the acting and the costume and then voice. So Leonardo is Mark Casso and Brian Tachi as the voice. Raphael's Matt Hill and Tim Keller as the voice. Donatello Jim Raposa and Corey Feldman as the voice. Michelangelo David Frazier and Robbie Rist as the voice. James Murray is the new Splinter. Different Splinter, I think, from the last 2 movies. And I also noticed that, like, I tried to keep a running tally at this, but the names changed so much that I couldn't really keep track of it, trying to bounce around between the tabs of IMDb. But the freaking actors for the Turtles change so often and are so inconsistent in a lot of these movies. Raph, I think, has been the most inconsistent out of all 3. He has never had the same actor in costume or voice for any one of these movies so far.
Really?
It has changed every movie.
Huh.
And the guy that did in the first movie, which, as I was trying to poke around, Josh Pius, he did apparently they have him listed as the actor and voice for Raph for TMNT 1, and apparently came down with claustrophobia from wearing the suit and did not come back after that. Just between the weight of being encased in that thing, and he just could not handle it.
Wow, okay. That's shocking. Then I would say the person, like the voice actor that does Secret of the Ooze for Raphael, does a really good impression of that
Yes.
guy from the first one.
Because I noticed, one of the first things I noticed was Raph sounds different in this movie.
Oh, horribly.
So that would be a reason why. So Raph is never the same. I think some of the voices for the Turtles largely stay the same. I think Brian Tachi, was Leonardo for all 3. Feldman was Donatello for the first one, not the second one, but came back for this one. And I think Robbie Rist was the voice of Michelangelo for all 3. But I think the actors that were in the suits, I think, vary. And as far as the film's budget, now Josh, we were sort of texting about this as you were watching. So I'll lead with the budgets for the first 2 movies, and then you guys can let me know what you think the guess is for this movie. So the budget for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, $13.5 million. The budget for Secret of the Ooze, $25 million. So any guesses for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3?
15 million.
20 million.
Andy says 20. Josh?
It can't have been more, but maybe they tried to go big and failed.
I couldn't tell from your text if you were trying to figure out, like, if you were saying that this movie should not have a big budget, or you thought it might be a bigger budget.
I mean, initially the intent was it looked way cheaper. Way the frick cheaper. There's like 1.5 sets. But like I said, sometimes they overblow their money thinking they're doing bigger things, and it just doesn't look like that because they wasted a bunch. But 13 to 25, I'll go 14.
Andy was the closest. 21 million.
Ooh, I was really close.
So any guesses for worldwide box office for this movie? And again, I'll give the refresher. So TMNT 1 domestically made 135 million. Worldwide ended at 202. TMNT 2 did not release internationally. So domestic and worldwide are the same. That is $78.6 million. So it fell. Worldwide, it made, less than half of what it did for the first one. And these were a year apart. So the whole point, I think, of Turtles 2 was, hey, we need to capitalize on what is happening with Turtles right now. It's a hot brand. Get the next movie out as soon as possible to make some more money off of this stuff. That obviously did not work. So how do you think this one did compared to those two?
Did it release internationally?
Also true. Yes, Turtles 3 did not go international, so worldwide would be whatever the domestic is.
40.
22.
Andy?
I'm gonna say 30.
Ian was closest this time. $42 million.
Oh, they're
wow.
lucky.
So it is. All the three of these movies are incrementally going down.
I don't know if incrementally is the right
That's true.
word.
Yeah, I guess.
Drastically.
I was thinking like exponentially, and I said incrementally. It was the complete opposite of what I wanted to say. All right, so I'll mention these now, and then we'll revisit when we get to our own ratings. But Rotten Tomato currently, it's sitting at a rating of critic rating of 23%, audience rating at 34%. Metacritic is a little bit kinder, has a Metascore of 40 and a user score of 5.3. So for everyone around the table, is this a first-time viewing for you, or is this a rewatch? Andy, we'll start with you.
This is a rewatch.
Do you remember the last time you watched it? How long ago it's been?
Man, it has been a long time since I watched this movie. A lot of the stuff, I mean, I remembered basic plot points, but yeah, I might have only ever seen this movie once or twice, and that was probably right when it came out on video.
Yeah, okay. Josh?
It is a repeat, but sort of the same. It might be a little bit more recent. I don't even have them anymore because I think I gave them to my nephew, but I think I bought like the 3-pack DVD set as one of my first, like, I got an adult job gifts
I
after
gotta own them
college.
Turtles movies.
And well, because it was like 2006, 2007, and like I had a little bit of income finally, and that was like the big dawn of like movie multi-pack collections.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when those really first started coming out. So I think I watched it around the time that I bought that, but it's been at least 15 years.
Yeah. Ian, first time watch or rewatch?
First time.
Ooh,
Oh,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, we've been over this. Ian's not the one that grew up with Turtles. The rest of us did. Ian did not. So he's coming from a very interesting place with these movies. This is obviously, yes, a rewatch for me as well. I also do not remember the last time I watched this movie. Definitely growing up. Like, all three of the Turtles movies I watched as a kid. And, a lot of the movies I grew up with as a kid, I always had the soundtracks for. So the music for this, brings back that nostalgia too. Just because I remember listening to the soundtrack after having watched the movie numerous times. But, it's probably been a good 20, 25 years probably for me for watching this. I can't imagine I watched this in my teens. It had to have been pre-teen since the last time I've watched this movie. All right, so it's the time of the show where we're going to get into the discussion portion. Since we'll be discussing everything for the movie, I'm going to go throw out the spoiler warning. So if you have not seen 1993's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, and you don't want to be spoiled, you can feel free to pause this now. Come back to us after you've seen the movie. Really, it's probably not worth saving yourself the trouble for this one. Just listen to the show. Like, just go with it. But if you would like to listen anyway, and right after the spoiler alert, we'll do our 60-second summary, which will hopefully give you enough of a general plot of the movie that you can listen to our discussion.
We cover all 3 plot points.
Yeah, all the big
three
three.
of them.
Either way, spoilers to follow, so feel free to pause this now.
Wee-oo, spoiler! Wee-oo, spoiler! Something like that.
Okay, so we have the spoiler alert out of the way. We're rolling into the 60-second summary. So again, the goal of this is to give you an idea of the plot of the movie, if you care to listen along anyway. We have added the challenge of having to give you that summary in under 60 seconds. So, but luckily if we do it quick enough and you miss anything, feel free to rewind and listen again, because we can do that on a podcast. Ian has volunteered to run this one. So we got him on the hot seat. So you have 60 seconds on the clock, sir, whenever you are ready.
Hit play. One of the turtles is upset they get no respect April stops by to give them her junk. She then swaps places with the son of a feudal Japanese lord because they weigh the same. Thanks to science, the turtles figure out how time travel works. April is rightfully imprisoned for being a bitch. During her trial, Lord Seaweed Snake's grasp on the English language changes by the minute. After figuring out quantum mechanics, the turtles time travel into a battle. Mikey is lost during battle because he doesn't know how to ride a horse. April is easily rescued by 3 brothers. The brothers then save the peasant village, who is rebelling against Lord Seaweed Snake. The Lord decides to buy guns from Walker London Ranger. Walker alters the deal, which he later alters further. The scepter is at the peasant village, hidden so the turtles have to fight. Feudal Casey steals April and the scepter. Lord Seaweed Snake is defeated and Walker falls into a green screen with no splash effect. Everyone switches back and we end once again on a Splinter joke.
Well done.
Thank you.
With no splash effect.
I was going to bring that
Totally
up because that was
true.
so painfully obvious to me.
Oh
this time.
God, it was so bad.
Oh, that was great. Good job.
Thank you.
I kind of want to just lean into the splash effect thing. So does that push us on special effects and explosions as the first topic?
Yeah,
Let's do
so
it.
that whole end scene, because let's get to 0 out of 10 on explosions. I thought I was gonna give it a real score because Wit, who's feudal Casey, cuts the rope on a what are they called?
Catapult.
Catapult, not a trebuchet, a catapult, which is not used in the battle up until this point,
Right.
and it's aimed at the ocean. And it shoots off a flaming rock, I guess, that's been on fire this whole time, aimed at the ocean. They hit this pole that then doesn't explode.
Nor does
They
it
knock-
break or anything. Yeah.
Just like
knocks
shake
that
Walker
guy off
into the
balance.
water, who literally falls into like the most obvious green screen effect I think we've seen in Rewind Theater history. And then you hear a splash noise, and Walker's no longer seen, but there's no splash.
He
There's
literally-
nothing to indicate visually he is now underwater.
He literally disappears through like a Looney Tunes hole. Like it just
Yeah.
appears
Yeah.
and he wipes away and then comes back. Just there's water.
It was the oddest fucking thing, especially because like I don't know how they fucked up filming a catapult, but they had to like use slow motion to capture it. Like almost they had to edit it into post because they didn't have the camera set up right to catch it. It was the weirdest fucking thing.
I kind of love how like the whole time he's like cutting the rope for the catapult and you're like, oh, here he goes. This guy's going to get hit with that rock and it doesn't even hit the guy. It hits the pole. It's like, oh, misdirection.
And it's only there because he goes back up to get his fucking birds.
Yep. Those damn birds were his downfall.
I mean, they set that up like a couple times. So, you know, he goes back to get the bird once or twice already. So when he finally does it in that final part, it totally makes sense.
It's like such a weird like comedy bit they keep trying to do with these movies, especially like this one had it the worst, but I guess that's a different category. But like, fuck, like, why did he have to keep going back up there? It was just weird. Other special effects, there weren't many. There was the cannonball that somehow destroyed multiple pieces of armor, even though it seemed like it wasn't aimed to destroy the armor like that.
Yeah.
And it just shook the armor off. It didn't explode the sticks that was holding up the armor.
it set off like a chain reaction. Did you see? It was like
Yeah.
yeah.
It was like you shot a cannonball into a row of dominoes, but they were armor.
Yeah. It made
Fucking
zero
dumb
sense.
as shit. Like,
That might be the
They-
best explosion in the movie.
and it doesn't even explode.
Yeah.
And it's horrible, yeah.
Like even the cannonball shooting out of the cannon creates less smoke than smoking that cigar would have caused. And then the turtles looked fine, I guess. That's a special effect.
No.
No, I thought they looked fucking horrible.
Yeah, well, I feel like you're not remembering the other two movies. They didn't
Oh.
look much worse.
No, they looked way worse than this.
Like the
Way
only
worse.
worst thing is like their eyes creeped me out in this one.
I
Well-
think I think that's the thing. I think as a costume, I think, you know, as a puppet costume thing, they look good. I'm with Ian. I think they still look fine. Compared to the other movies, they look freaky as hell. Just I think it's the eyes. I think the eyes freak me out.
I went the opposite way. I think I'm with Andy. I don't know if it's the same reason. I remember when we did Swamp Thing 2, one of the pluses that we gave that was that the Swamp Thing suit looked way better
Yes.
than the first movie, because the first movie just looked like rubber pieces on a person. That is exactly what these looked like this time.
Yeah.
The outfits, whatever, like the construction, the fabrication of the costumes, and the control. I will say that this one had the best articulation available in the face.
Yeah.
To express, but it was done in a really strange way, and the rest of the costume just absolutely looked like a rubber costume. It didn't look like a thing at all. I thought the suits themselves looked way better in. Actually, I think the suits in the first movie looked the best.
Yeah.
I think it's
to
a
me,
lighting
to
thing.
me, the effects on the face and the talking, it almost looked like the old school Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, like stop motion claymation type stuff. To me, it was
Okay.
really jerky and like almost
Yeah.
like a flip page, and I didn't care for it. It freaked me out.
Sarah said that multiple times, that there's like the one part, I forget who's doing it. It might be towards the end. Leonardo is like comforting somebody, or he just saved something.
The little kid.
I guess so, yeah. And they don't show what the kid's reaction is, but the look on Leonardo's face is he's like cradling this child, like is
He
so
looks like some
freaking
kind of weird
frightening.
molester. Yeah.
He does, like their
Okay,
whole thing about like,
That's
oh,
not
they're
out of place for the turtles.
Hey, now you watch your
They-
tongue.
said like the whole culture's spin on them, like, oh, they're demons because yeah, they kind of look like it. I absolutely get that. I
Yeah.
think Splinter looked effing horrible.
Oh,
My god,
you know what
like
he
a
looked
Chuck
like?
E. Cheese animatronic.
Exactly. He looks like he was going to whip out a banjo and start singing about using tokens
Yes.
and eating pizza.
Absolutely. They even framed him like inside the train, so you only have to create from his waist up, and he's leaning over through the window, and his head is just like all blocky and whatnot. Oh, it looked so freaking weird.
Fucking terrible.
I feel like to Ian's point though, like these are not different than the other movies. Like Splinter did the same thing in the other two movies.
But
I
he
would
looked
argue-
way better
Yeah,
in the
I'd
other
argue
movies. Like,
that
way
the
No,
better.
they're just
execution.
they got lighting.
Yeah.
This now takes place in the light.
I think that's a
what
lot of the
happened.
problem, is that this is in the daytime. These are in well-lit areas, so every little flaw that these costumes and puppets had the first two movies that were bathed in darkness and well hidden.
I will challenge on this one point. Briefly pop your movies in, pull them up on HBO Max, whatever. Look at just the creature design for Splinter. In the first two movies, his face at least looks like it has the correct snout shape
Mhm.
of a rat. This one, his entire face is a block,
Okay.
and it looks goddamn weird.
Well, I think,
Was it
mean,
this-
obviously he looks the best for the first. I think they all look the best for the first movie. I will agree to that. Splinter especially, because you finally get like full body shots of Splinter in that movie, because he actually has stuff to do in that movie. I don't remember him doing anything in the second one, and he definitely doesn't do shit in this movie, where they just plop him in a chair basically and just let him sit there the whole time. We're only seeing basically the waist up, if that, for
Mhm.
Splinter. So he obviously, I think, got less time to make him look good for this movie.
That was on purpose.
Yeah. And I think, to someone's point about the costume changing, and I didn't notice it, I don't think, between 1 and 2, but as I was doing some, like, gathering information for this movie, I had started to see, like, screenshots and stuff of the first movie, and the turtles themselves, the design of the turtles changed, I think, from 1 to 2, but I noticed it a lot more in this one from what the first movie looks like. Just the shape of their head. I think they felt more unique in the first one. In this one, they just feel like the same turtle, but just different colors every one.
And I maybe more they leaned into it a little bit more in the second one, but definitely in this, their head design also just seemed to be more of a like a basketball shape, a volleyball shape. It's just a sphere, whereas the
Very
design in the
bulbous.
first one and then retained in some degree in the second, it I don't even I don't have the knowledge to say whether it's more anatomically correctly designed or not, but you're right. There's more unique definition to the shape of it, to the design of it. You know, that their cheeks are like puffed out and they're wider, and the head is a different skull shape.
It's almost like they took the design of the cartoon and said, how do we make the cartoon live action instead of how do we make these Ninja Turtles live action? It was literally, let's take 1-to-1 what the cartoon looks like and make that live action.
Probably spot on.
This was also the first one that Jim Henson Productions didn't do the Turtles.
Oh, that would explain a lot too.
Yeah. They got a different company to do it this time. I'm assuming because of the budget cuts.
Well, I remember reading too, and I don't think it came up. I don't remember if it came up when we did the first one, but for the first movie, Jim Henson and the director got together to design these turtles, and I think the pitch was, we're going to make a kid-friendly movie, and Jim Henson was behind a kid-friendly movie, and then they see what they're cutting for the movie and shooting, and it's very dark and gritty, and then they're like, we did not agree to this. Like, there was some back push there, just because of the difference in pitch and what Jim Henson thought they were signing on to do and what actually was coming out, to the point where they kicked the director off the editing and post-production of the movie because of that change in vision and how badly they disagreed with all that stuff. So I'm still surprised, you know, with that in mind, I'm surprised the first movie turned out as well as it did. All right, so that's our timer for special effects and explosions. Anything real quick to add? Nothing else?
They could have gotten the Swamp Thing guys, and it might have been better.
No argument here.
I didn't actually pick it up, but I'll end it where Ian started it. They tried to shoot the ocean with a catapult.
Hey, that would make sense if they weren't against a cliff and they were trying to ward off boats, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, all the boats were already there.
Yeah.
All right.
Catapults be heavy. They're hard to turn around.
Andy, where would you like to go next? Direction, story, actors, characters, or soundtrack?
Direction.
All right. Direction is yours, sir. Timer's gone.
Was there any? Everything is just so rollicking in this. Like, nothing seems to have a specific. It's a rudderless movie to me. It's just like they just keep finding random shit to do.
Yeah,
like we're gonna do this because this is what's it's happening. We're gonna do this because this is what's happening. We're gonna do this because this is what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, nothing. I guess there's not a lot of shots that I can think of that are like, yes, that's a cool shot for a movie. It's just kind of there. Stuff's in.
I really
the frame.
like the shot of the beach though, because I'm 90% sure that's the same beach from Planet of the Apes.
Like the one that opens the movie.
Like the one with the Statue of Liberty in it. I was like 90% sure. I'm like, they just edited out the Statue of Liberty.
Well, I mean, like the shot that opens this movie is the on the beach, right? With the horses.
This is when the one I'm thinking of specifically is when they're testing out the guns right before the purchase.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're on that shot of the beach. Like, I'm like, that's that fucking beach. It's either that or like that's it. That's the same beach. Other than that, I think they did at least 2 takes for every scene. So that's, someone's got to make that decision, and someone did. A lot of the jokes, I feel like, for the Turtles, I guess is partly writing, but direction-wise, I felt like they weren't written when they filmed it. They wrote the jokes later, and the director's just like, okay, do something funny looking, guys.
And then we'll just, ADR it later?
Yeah, like there was like a couple very specific ones where like mouths don't move because they, at that time filming it, there wasn't a line there. That happened more than once. I think these fights actually might be the best fights directed in the whole series.
Honestly, I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up.
Like,
barely.
Like the first one, again, is, I think, hurt from that and how dark it was. It's kind of hard to see, and I also don't think those are the worst costumes for movement in.
Yeah.
And we also know that from people almost dying filming that movie.
Yeah.
This one, you could see it, and they had more like full range of motion, and they were allowed to use their weapons again.
Yes.
Which was a big thing.
Some of them were. Michelangelo never used his nunchucks once. Not once.
That is also true. Yes.
I'm also not sure he knows how at this point.
I usually use like Leo as my barometer. Like if Leo's
Yeah.
whipping out the swords and trying to slice people with them. Granted, he doesn't slice anyone with them, but he is using them in a fight, which is more than we got in Turtles 2.
He used them a lot. Yeah.
I'm gonna cut in there on that point because I specifically wrote down, because we pointed it out in the other two movies. Yes, Leo does use his swords defensively. You never see him strike a blow with them. And more than that, in a movie where one side of the characters, if you will, one side is an army of swords. That is their primary weapon. So you have a turtle, one of your main protagonists, fighting with two swords against an entire army is your opponent with swords, and not one freaking person is shown to be hurt or killed in any way with swords.
Yeah, no one gets stabbed. No one gets
There's-
sliced.
There's not
and
even
no
like
one
an
gets punched in the
allusion to
face.
Well,
There's,
Leonardo tells Yoshi no one's gonna die.
it.
No, that was Raphael.
He didn't break his. What? Who cares? Who gives a shit? But I guess the other thing I'm thinking about that now, the very beginning of the movie when Kenshi is trying to escape, that is the worst goddamn sword fight I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
Though.
Yes.
I
Oh,
wrote
when
that
they're
down
on the
horseback.
horses? That's terrible.
Like, I don't think anyone has ever fought like that ever, except to film this movie.
And I love how they end it with like, okay, you're captured now. Come with us. And they just lead the horse away. It's like, jump off the horse.
No, he literally says you're gonna have to kill me, and then they just grab the reins of his horse, and he's captured. That's all they do.
I
Yeah,
wrote,
there's a lot of like plot point decisions that are just like, what? How?
Yeah.
that was the very first note I wrote down. Just worst quote sword fight ever.
Yeah.
It's the worst choreography for a conflict ever.
Like, I think you could maybe do a cool horse fight sword scene, but like, horses have never been used like that, where you like just try and stand there and slash swords with someone. Like, you
Yeah.
used to have to run in and then run away, run in. Like, they took away the whole reason to be on the horseback in that fight. Like, I would have rather watched horses dancing.
Was that an option? Because I would have watched that.
It's in the director's cut.
Oh, nice.
Josh, you got anything to add?
I do. So this is where most of my like random, these moments were just weird choices type thing. Overall, I'll say there was, and I don't know why, it felt like their goal was to be as finger on the pulse with pop culture in their zingers as possible.
Can you call them zingers? Really?
I mean, whatever they tried to make, like, Mikey busts out of the house that's on fire with the kid and makes a backdraft joke.
He does.
Kurt Russell, eat your heart. Who the frick is gonna remember backdraft?
Well, that's always the
That's a good
downside
movie.
of using
Hey.
pop culture jokes is that within 5 years they don't hold up. So unless you are on, you were alive when that was pop culture, you have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
Remember that Ralph Nader joke?
that
That was more coherent than
That
some
was
of these
worse.
references, because some were just straight up ripping off the line like "I'll be back."
All right, there
that
was
one-
one joke that I actually laughed at in this movie, and that was when Donatello hits the bell, and he's like, "That name rings a bell."
Oh, I did chuckle at that also.
Yes.
The only jokes
thing.
I liked-
Everything else was an eye roll.
like the one I really liked was when Casey said when the guy started fighting that was close enough for him for hockey.
For hockey,
I like
yeah.
that. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I get that.
Oh, the one, the pop culture name drop they did for Lord Norkana, whatever the guy, the Chinese bad guy.
Norinaka.
Yeah,
Whatever.
they called him an actor's name, Wayne Newton. When he said, "Oh, it's Wayne Newton," I
Yes.
was like, "Oh, I got that. I like that."
I will say that, yes. I did chuckle with that.
Because then I couldn't not see Wayne Newton the whole rest of the movie.
Very late in the game, Donnie makes an Addams Family joke where he says, were you expecting the Addams Family? And like the banter that I think one of the other brothers replies with for no reason is you hear him say, "Good one." It wasn't. It was not. It was terrible.
It was not.
I
a
do
good
love
one.
that, like, every
It's
crappy
incorrect.
one-liner, the brothers in the back are just, like, high-fiving each other, like, that was great. Like,
Yeah. Then
Like,
there was
the weirdest one for me was when they said, like, they use a different scepter to travel through time, it might make them go somewhere else. And he's like, what if we end up in Godzilla land?
I
And
did
I'm
catch
like,
the
are we not
Godzilla
in
name drop.
Japan? Are we not in Japan right now? That's when I got confused, wondering if I had stopped paying attention at some point.
Yeah, no,
And
I had the
then
same,
I guess
same moment.
this might be direction too. So they mentioned like English people forcing trade open, but then Walker's not dressed like an Englishman.
Yeah, he's like
dressed more like French
French.
rogue to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks old-timey. That's good enough for kids.
Captain Hook-esque motherfucker. Like, wait, why did they do a Captain Hook joke now? Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, Peter Pan's timeless. Let's go.
Like that and the like his henches are just like generic. They could have been in the Pirates, like they had that
Yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean outfit going on.
All right, so we got a minute 15 on the timer, so I want to make sure Josh gets in here.
Yeah, I got a couple more. So it was weird that they also put in a schwing joke.
Oh,
for
Yes.
that
Super
Wayne's World
weird.
hype at the time. I mean, they kind of toyed with the notion, but not really in the first two. But this one just flat out was like, okay, these turtles want to have sex with April, and it's very obvious that by the end, Michelangelo wants to stay in the historical past of feudal Japan and have a relationship and probably sex with Mitsu.
yes.
That's weird. That's weird.
And he also knows like she wants to date Kenshi because he told her. He guessed that.
Yeah, and like towards the end when he's basically saying like, no, you can't stay here because then he can't come back, and he's like, oh, well, I mean, does that bother you?
I mean, technically, he could have stayed there because the first time travel, Kenshi comes back and Mikey's stuck there. Kenshi replaced April.
Right, but his position on the matter was, oh, I guess so. You want your human boyfriend back?
Oh, right, yeah.
Who's your species? When Donnie is analyzing the scepter, he throws out math words that don't make sense at all.
Flanger, or what was the one?
And he throws out like, oh, I take the cosine of what he says, the reverse integer. Like, I thought about this. You could have paid a high school math teacher $250 and listed him as a consultant on the movie to say, write me 2 sentences that include math and physics sounding words for this. They couldn't even do that. That wet willy gag, oh, wasn't that good, guys.
Well, I like the fact that they shattered his eardrums because that's how big their fingers are.
It just ruptured.
My
them
favorite
within
was
his
that-
head.
My favorite was that they gave him a complex that he did it to himself.
Yeah. Really scarred him for life.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, you guys remember how glowing I talked about the first Turtles movie. I defended that in many, many ways. But once the circus music was used, when the Japanese transplants were fighting, playing hockey with Casey, that jumped the shark for me. Like, I was out. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Ian, where do you want to go next? Story, actors, characters,
Yes,
or soundtrack?
story, 'cause-
Story.
Because we just brought it up here with how Kenshi now time travels with someone else. That means that April weighs the same as the turtles. Because as we know, time travel is based on weight. You can travel through time and switch places if they weigh the same as you. So April weighs as much as one of those turtles.
That tracks. Because the guys that the turtles switched with are the same size as her and Kenshi.
Mhm.
They're not bigger fat people
Right.
that would be
Okay.
the same weight as a humongous turtle.
So
Yeah, I
guess
didn't get
we
the
do
whole
establish
weight
that.
thing, but every movie has their own time travel rules, so fine,
Did
we'll let it
this one?
slide. I think
That was the rule.
Yeah,
You gotta
that-
weigh
that
the
was it.
same.
yeah.
Weigh the same
they
in-
broke
in
it
midnight.
immediately.
Well, not to mention, they like when they first get there, like Mikey puts on shorts because he's like, I don't want the dudes to show up naked. And then the guys that are going back, like the samurais that go back later, try to get to what they started with, like basically get down to their like, knapsack looking thing that they were in.
Mm-hmm.
The one guy puts the shorts on, and then teleports out to the feudal Japan, comes back wearing the shorts, and walks out the door past everybody. So they've broken the rule of, like, no clothes, time travel with you. That dude definitely just walked out with some 90s shorts into feudal Japan.
Well, it's the weird thing for me with that is, like, the guys that aren't wearing pants, I think are supposed to be, like, it's kind of like a fundoshi they're supposed to be wearing, which is, like, kind of what the sumo guys wear.
Yeah.
But theirs, for some reason, have this chest piece, which all I can think about, I'm like, are you only allowed to show, like, so many male nipples at once? Like, what was I've never seen it, like, that clothing shown with a chest part, like, attached to it. Like, for the life of me, couldn't figure out why they went there.
Yeah,
but
I guess it was
Yeah,
only to give the impression, perhaps, that what they actually were wearing calls to mind the idea of, I won't say traditional, but like older timey underclothing that, especially from women, really. Just so it didn't seem like the kids are seeing these men in something that looks like just like they're in their underwear.
But that means the guy with shorts, though, doesn't have the chest part. That means he's free balling under there.
Well, one of the other jokes that actually landed was that one of the turtles makes mention of, like, when they're trying to travel back or something, like, hey, we're naked. Like, the whole, like, switching clothes situation, they make the joke that they are naked.
Yep.
I don't remember when it was, but that one landed for me, too.
I'm glad.
Also, I guess, I don't know why I'm so hung up on these clothes, but now I'm thinking about it, too. April cuts the outfit that she is in, that would be Kenshi's outfit. When he comes back to Japan,
he should be
the outfit's full again. It's not cut off at the bottom like she did.
What? It's not?
I don't think it is.
They didn't adhere to the very loose, basic, hardly any rules that they established at all.
I mean, that one's easily explainable, Bo, is that they were just different costumes.
I get that, but I'm just saying.
No, like, I just mean she never wore the same one. Like, they just, why would we cut his? We only have one of these. Like, the writing made no sense, but we got through the plot. Like, very beginning of the movie, hey, I found this weird scepter. And this was weird for me because April, when she shows up to give them her shit, she's like, I found this Japanese lamp. They ignore her.
Oh, yeah.
I got this Japanese antique. I don't even know if they paid attention at that point. And then she's like, maybe it's an egg timer. I'm like, are you dumb? Is she... I think she got fired from her job and is just like homeless now or something. I don't think she was going on vacation unless it was upstate. Which, speaking of, I guess Casey just showed up from prison. Like, I'm assuming that's what happened. They finally let him out for assaulting that child in the first film.
Are we on
Hey, it was
story
two
or are
kids.
we on characters?
Story.
Okay.
So I guess they wrote that in, like, hey, Casey's alive. I don't get it. Why is he in feudal Japan? I don't know.
That, I don't know if I ever made the connection as a kid that it was the same actor. But even looking at it now, like, they make, as soon as he shows up in Japan, she calls him Casey, and I was like, is it? And
I don't think
it
it's
still
supposed to
took me about half the movie to realize, no, that is the same guy.
Yeah.
I don't, like, either they do I'm so used to him as Casey, meaning, like, no beard and long hair, that when they do the reverse, I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Just me? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I like knew going in, like, that's the same guy, so I didn't have the issue, I guess. But, like, it was another thing with the writing where, like, they try and make him like a mini love interest, but we never reestablished that Casey's also still a love interest, because I'm like 90% convinced she hangs out with the turtles to get flirted with, because no one else will, because she's a loser. Fuck this.
All right, take a break.
But yeah, they move through.
Andy, you got anything for story you want to cover?
The English speaking was weird, I thought, in the story. I didn't understand why everyone knew how to speak English, really, except for the honor guard that went back and forward in time.
Fair.
As far as story went, I thought they did a really fucking horrible job of trying to establish any sort of romance between anybody. It was
Also fair.
And definitely
so
nobody of the same species.
superficial. Yeah, like it was superficial with Mikey and whatever her name was, leader of the rebellion. It was superficial between leader of the rebellion and son of the evil overlord guy. Just everything was just like super flaky with
Yeah.
that. Like they didn't. I don't know that.
Like the only love story that worked for me was like the familial love between Yoshi and that one turtle.
I can see it.
You got anything else, Andy?
No, I don't think I have anything else now.
Okay.
Writers didn't either.
Yeah, it was,
Writer.
it was
One.
pretty rough.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that he's one person. I think he might be multiple people.
I think
There's a
we
lot
might
of
have watched.
uncredited people.
Yeah, I think we might have watched a movie that was a rough draft.
Josh, what do you got for story?
I really want to. I want to be generous and kind to this. It's really hard to find anything. I mean, just from bare bones to execution, it's all bad.
Yeah,
It
Yeah,
is.
it's
Nothing.
not great.
Nothing makes sense. Nothing pays off. Nobody's motivations or actions really serve any better, greater goal. We get it. They get sent back in time. So the whole idea is we need to get out of where we are and back where we came from. And there's a conflict that we got tossed into in the middle. So we'll help someone along the way. I get that, sure, but everything else to serve those goals is just it's done so badly.
So there's one detail that's in the story that is sort of glossed over, and then they sort of make it a point to bring it up a couple times. But I'm like, what the? Why do you not explain this more? So there's the whole like prophecy of the turtles that like defeated this guy's ancestors.
Oh yeah.
So this is not supposed to be like a prophecy of the turtles we know. This is supposed to have happened thousands of years ago with another batch of Ninja Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
So what? How the fuck did that happen? Where did that come from?
I mean, those were actually Kappa. That was the thing. These turtles just coincidentally showed up at a place that had a very strong Kappa lore and capitalized on it.
Sure.
It's just like, when you happen to land on some type of moon planet and you happen to have a golden robot that becomes a god, they just end up in the right place at the right time.
Which I could get if the prophecy was like, okay, 2 days from now, we foretold this battle of these demon beasts that will win it for us. No,
Right.
This is a depiction of something that happened years ago and to happen to like these people's ancestors. So this apparently happened once before.
Yeah, and it's not. They don't even get into the idea that like they were. It was said that they'd be destined to return to liberate us again.
Yes.
Nothing.
Yes.
Well, I also like that they defeated the ancestors, but they still ruled the land. Like nothing changed.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm wondering. I don't even think it happened before.
It just
I think it's just a story.
All right. Then that was definitely, if that's the case, like that needs to be explained more for me.
I think someone just was really good at drawing feudal-looking turtles, and they're like, put it in script,
Yeah.
sign it.
Wouldn't this be a cool idea if they came across this? And that's it. Yep.
Here's your $2 million.
Like all it
So-
needed was like the old lady that's the prophet, like, this is this like Kung Fu Panda 2, like the prediction of like,
Oracles. and
this
stuff.
guy's defeated by the panda, and that's how all that kind of stuff. That's what I needed there to connect the dots.
They also could have just been like, hey, Kenshi, so when you go back, get that April Gold to hold the scepter, and then we'll send whoever replaces you back.
So my impression of that was that eventually the Ninja Turtles would find some other way to go even further back into time and become the ancestors' Kappas.
Fulfill that prophecy.
Right.
And
but
defeat
right,
original Shredder.
but they originally they go back and see what they would eventually do. I don't know. It's the whole time travel, like when things occur
Right.
Yeah.
thing. So
It's almost like they set the plot out, like they were putting breadcrumbs in there for like Turtles 4 to go further back into Japan. And,
yeah.
Well, I would beg to differ because most of the notes that I saw looking up my background stuff about like this ended up kind of being the Batman and Robin of the Turtles franchise.
Oh yeah, I can get that.
There apparently was a hopeful fourth installment being kicked around that would follow none of that.
Okay.
It would like ignore all of this. It would involve the idea that the ooze would cause more mutations later on in the life of those that were exposed to it.
Oh, okay. See, that would be interesting to me.
And some other like elements that I saw, but yeah, there was apparently nothing tying any of this story to anything else.
So, granted, I didn't spend a lot of time trying to Google it, but one of the things I was interested about was I want to know the backstory of the making of this movie. Not the first one or the second one. I want to know, like, why things were decided upon for this movie, why this story came up. That's something I was trying to Google, is like the making of Turtles 3. Every time I tried to type in the making, it just catches the making of a Teenage Mutant Turtles movie, and it kept passing me along to the first movie. I kept finding all these articles about the first movie, nothing about this one.
Because
So-
I think the
'Cause they
weirdest thing
buried it.
for me is
Yeah.
that like this didn't get an international release because they use a lot of people who go on to become kind of like prominent Chinese actors. So it almost felt like they chose them specifically for that market. But I guess we're not maybe in a time period where the Chinese market's that strong yet, but
Which would
it just felt weird.
make sense because the second movie didn't get an international release, so they wanted to lean into that and, like you said, put a bunch of Japanese Chinese people cast them in the movies to try to hit that market, and then they still didn't get it.
Because like Mitsu still acts to this day in China.
Nice. Okay. So where are we at? Actors and characters or soundtrack? Josh, what do you want to go with?
Actors, characters.
Okay.
I
Take it, sir.
was I had to look it up in the first 5 minutes just to confirm. I was happy that Corey Feldman was back as Donatello. His change from 1 to 2 from the voice was as drastic as Raphael's from 1 and 2 to this. Like, it was so standout noticeable.
Really? I didn't even notice it wasn't the Feldster in the second one until we talked about it after, like, when we recorded.
Oh, really?
I thought it was. I thought the voice sounded perfect. I was like, yeah, it's Feldman. Yeah.
Oh, no, to me, absolutely 180 degrees different to me. He has that such, like, even at that point in his life, like, that, like, signature, like, froggy, raspy tone to him. Other than that, I was happy to that. I was happy to see Elias Koteas back. Like, Casey Jones walks in a room with, that, I hate to say it, like, that feathered hair and those fingerless leather gloves, and you're like, this dude's a badass.
Okay, while I'm going to interject here a little bit if you don't mind. While I liked seeing him in the movie, his characters, plural, did not get anything to do.
Nope.
I was going to make that point. Yes.
Right. It's
I
like
agree.
Neither one needed to be in the movie. Neither one.
So the point that I made about it was, while I was happy to have Casey Jones back in the movie, given what he was ultimately given to do or really not do, how much extra do you think they threw at Elias Koteas? Like, I feel like he was an afterthought. Like, they started building the story, and they're like,
But he's top billed.
this,
Yeah.
yeah. Because that was probably, I wouldn't be surprised, part of the contract negotiation. You want me back? I'm a fan favorite. I'm the face of Casey Jones. The rest of this is shit. Give me a little bump in money, probably, and put me at the top.
I feel like when he showed up in the movie and you start to realize he's just relegated to a babysitter, I made a note. How did they get him back? Because this role is terrible.
Yep.
And then you start to realize, again, it took me a while, but halfway through the movie when you realize he's pulling double duty, and then I was like, oh, okay, so they gave him more screen time, and then you look at the cast and he's top billed. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I left with the same thought that Andy had, is he had 2 roles, he was top billed, and had absolutely fuck all to do.
Yeah.
So I still don't know the answer to that question. How did they get him back? The answer is probably a truckload of money, but we don't know what that money is.
Just exposure, prominence. Like, look, I'm the
Five-
top billed
5
actor
grand.
in a successful installment of a franchise.
Right.
And I mean, he's had a good career after that.
One of the few.
Yeah.
You got anything else? Spin it to somebody else.
Nope.
Ian, what do you got? Actors and characters.
So I understand, like, plot wise, yeah, he doesn't have a lot to do, like Casey, but the only like fun parts of this film that aren't maybe the action sequences are when there's no turtles on screen. That's the only time this movie becomes bearable humor wise, is when there's zero turtles. Because the turtles are just like, remember the 80s? They're like robot chicken in a movie that has no like tone. They don't know what they're doing tonally, the turtles. Like, they bounce around from like, we're happy-go-lucky fun, but also maybe we got to defeat this rebellion, and I grew up enough to teach kids not to be angry. But at the same time, hey, butts are funny, right, guys? Like, I wish they weren't in this film almost. Like, that somehow would have made it better if they were the Zords. Like, Zords are like the robots from Power Rangers.
Yep.
Like, if they only showed up to fight in because someone summoned them, and then they went away the rest of the time. Like, I think Stuart Wilson did fine as Walker. I was like, yeah, that guy's bad. He's bad news. I didn't like how he was dressed, but that's not his fault. He's doing the best he could with that material, I thought.
I thought he was the standout character, to be honest.
Like, Vivian Wu did a fine job as Mitsu. I thought, like, she, again, not a lot to work with in, like, they're trying to tell this, like, N-tier Romeo and Juliet story, and she survived it. This didn't ruin her. Like, and then whoever played the idiot guard did a great job as being the idiot, like, henchman guy. Not the big fat one, but, like, the other fat one that's not as fat that works for Walker, who just gets called, like, Dumbo the whole time.
Niles.
Yeah, he did a fine job in the, hey, I'm dumb role.
Andy, you got anything for characters, actors?
Yeah, I feel like they didn't do a very good job of differentiating the turtles' personalities in this. Like, nowhere in this movie did I feel like Leonardo was the leader, as he's supposed to be.
Okay.
Was he the one that the one turtle said he hated because he was
Yes.
standing on the horse? Okay.
Yeah. Also, they indicate that the turtles were going to be using horses by having them train with the horses. So you would have thought that Leonardo would have led the charge in with the horses, but yeah, they never picked that back up.
Oh, I didn't even put that together. That's a good
They
point.
don't even, like, horses
Yeah,
aren't even involved in that battle.
No, yeah, what's the point of showing everyone that Leonardo can do like bat flicks on top of a horse?
Yeah, they scaled the wall.
There is literally no payoff to that whatsoever. They don't really do a good job of showing the Donatellos. Well, the only one that I would say that they do a good job of showing like what they are capable of is like Donatello by building the shitty blacksmith fake scepter, only to have it thrown down a well 35 seconds later. Like, they don't to me, they don't show Raphael as being like the rebel, and they don't show Michelangelo as being like the fun-loving guy. Like, they didn't do a very good job of any of the turtle characters, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The only time you get a taste of that is at the very beginning when April brings shit home for them. It's like, I got you
Yeah.
this thing because it reflects you, and then after that, it's it.
Yeah, but that's it's props. It's not actually like showing the personality of the turtles. You're just like, okay, you have a purple bandana, so you get this radio, and you have an orange bandana, so you get this lampshade, and like, there's no, like, they don't really even interact with it before she starts grabbing the scepter and like going to feudal Japan.
I don't know. Remember I said later, like after she disappears, I think it's at Donnie starts saying those math words
Yeah.
when he's looking at the sketch of it. I mean, clearly
I think-
he's smart.
The only one for me that I might argue at least tries to get some sort of character arc in this movie is Raphael. I think they give him sort of enough to do where he's starting to question his personality. Being out in nature seems to be doing better for his soul, and he seems to lose a little bit of the anger, where he is the only one where I might actually believe that he would want to stay there. Michelangelo, you can see him chasing tail, and that makes that makes sense for him, but as far as the rest of the story is concerned, I never thought, like, yes, he's going to be the one to stay. If
Does
there
it
was
make
one turtle that was
sense?
going to be like, I'm going to stay here, I thought for sure it was going to be Raphael.
does it make sense for him as he's chasing a human being?
Yeah,
Well,
they've always been into humans.
yeah.
Uh,
I feel like he's been chasing April for 2 movies already, so to me that made sense.
did you find it weird though that the shift, like this little kid Yoshi, seems
Master Yoshi.
to interact with all of them? Like, but it's like a Raphael or Michelangelo is the one who. Okay, first of all, Yoshi half deserved to die because
Oh.
the house is on hear me out. The house
Oh,
is
no.
on
Yep.
fire. The kid is standing at an open window with 3.5 feet of space on the first floor between the bottom of the window and the next board. And he's just sitting there yelling helplessly, step out. You have a big, you're
Save
like,
yourself.
you're half a step away from just being in front of the open door and just standing there crying. So if you perish, that's half like your own damn fault. But Michelangelo is the one who rushes into the burning building to save him. And the next time you see Yoshi, he's like, oh, I'm going to hang out with Raphael. He could give shit all about Michelangelo for the
Yeah.
rest
How
of the
about
movie.
Leo, who fucking brought him back from death?
Yeah.
With voodoo.
Who do? You do.
Like,
But I
don't
think
know.
that just proves my point that none of these turtles' names matter.
No, it's.
I don't
also
think
the
that
point,
kid
like,
knew until like the one like finally confirmed his name. He's like, okay, I'm only remembering this one name.
But like by that point, you either don't need to show Michelangelo being heroic to save anybody because that relationship doesn't go anywhere, or if you want to, you don't have to have the kid he saves be the same kid that ends up with some kind of emotional mentor relationship with one of the other turtles. It's a strange choice.
How many SAG cards do you want them to give out to kids?
I think thinking about it now, the only reason probably it's not just like one turtle is that you, as a movie, like, you know, everybody thinking of the audience and like, you know, PR type of crap, is that you don't want to make one turtle the clear favorite because
Sure.
presumably the audience, everyone has their own favorite. So you want to give every turtle something to do.
Right, and so you get your Michelangelo and your Leonardo moments are to help build trust and calmness with the people of that village who are viewing them as still potential demons and threats and etc. I
Yeah.
get that. But again, using the same kid character for all 3 of those scenarios, and maybe Ian's right. Maybe like, well, we can literally like not cast and hire 2 more kids.
Yeah.
We'll just literally use the same character for all of it. Maybe that was the reason.
Yeah, I think normally when we question stuff like this, just from experience, like reading up on this stuff, it all comes down to money, time and money for movies. So what would be the cheapest and quickest thing to do? Use the same kid.
Especially with how hard it is to get like a passable child actor.
Yeah. Which Yoshi was not great
No.
as an
Yeah.
actor.
Wasn't the worst. Wasn't great.
But like, I believed he might have been terrified of this giant turtle man at one point. Jesus.
That's enough. That's all we needed. All right, our last category, soundtrack. Andy, do you want to kick off soundtrack?
So trying to find the name of the song that plays at the end of the credits. We Google it and
Tarzan Boy.
yeah, and Jess says, "Oh, this is definitely it," because the lyrics actually go oh 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 oh. Look it up. There's like a whole paragraph of oh 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 oh.
That's the song I remember from the soundtrack growing up.
Yeah, and it's a great song.
That and the ZZ Top song. Those were the 2 that I remember listening to incessantly.
Yeah, and both good songs. Mostly forgettable soundtrack wise though. Like I don't
Yeah.
remember any of the orchestrated battle tracks or the only thing that really stood out in my mind is they had the revelation sound from the other Ninja Turtle movies.
Yes. They're like,
That- Yeah, Yeah, that's the only thing that I could say that really like stood out for me as far as the music goes, besides like the commercial music that I obviously love.
Yeah. I do think it's the worst soundtrack out of all three movies so far. I think the other two definitely had, more bangers, stuff that sticks with you a lot more, I think, than this one did.
I don't even think. I mean, so like looking at the credits and whatnot, I don't think this one actually compiled a soundtrack the way the others did. Like, there's songs that they used, but they did not release a soundtrack. There's only like 4 or 5 songs credited to the film.
I definitely had a soundtrack growing up.
No, they
so
made a soundtrack. There's only 4 songs credited, but there's a
Okay.
soundtrack. I'm looking at pictures of it.
Got it.
Is that all the soundtrack is? Just 5 songs?
No, they put 10 on there, but some of them might be remixes.
Mixes
So-
of these.
And some of them are like Yoshi's theme.
Well, one of the ones I remember from the soundtrack was they brought back the Turtle Power song from the first movie. That is not played.
TURTLE Power?
Yes. It's never played in the movie,
No.
but they put it on the
Put it on.
soundtrack.
TURTLE Power.
That's a great fucking song.
It
I love
is.
that song.
Don't get me wrong. It's good. It would have bumped
But
up
I'm
my
giving credit
thought
to
on
that
the
song
movie,
on the first
honestly.
movie, not this movie that was just repurposed for this movie. Ian, Josh, anything for soundtrack?
This was the best one. Rockin' Over the Beat and Tarzan Boy are the best 2 songs ever in the Turtles franchise, even better than the Ninja Rap.
I feel like that's blasphemy.
No, that's straight up true facts, dude. Pump up the jam. Oh, we oh, we oh, we oh. Oh, we oh. Give me another night. Like, yeah, those are bangers. Straight bangers.
We got 7 minutes on the soundtrack category. I think it's just going to be 7 minutes of Ian reciting as much as he remembers from these songs from the soundtrack.
I can help you out with the lyrics. Oh, 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 oh.
Jungle life. We're living in the open all alone. Like Tarzan's boy. Hide and seek.
Josh, anything to add for soundtrack so he stops singing?
No, nothing.
So should we just stop soundtrack there? We're good?
Yeah.
Night tonight. Give me the other.
Yeah.
Give me the other chance tonight.
I don't think there's much to talk about, honestly, as far as the soundtrack goes.
Yeah, because I think like you said, there's nothing like orchestrated that's memorable to me. I remember the Poppy songs and only the 1 or 2 that they sort of played, and that's about it.
Yeah, I really like this. Just looking at the soundtrack now, for the album, it's just the 5th one, Psychedelic Dust, featuring Loose Bruce, Turtle Jam.
That's the thing is like you look at the names of some of these songs on the soundtracks from back then, it just screams 90s. All right, so that's where we're gonna end soundtrack there. That's enough. That's enough for soundtrack. All right, so we're gonna wind down with our questions and ratings. So the one question we're gonna start with.
Can I talk about one thing first?
Oh yeah,
I
go.
didn't really know where it went as far as like category wise went.
Okay.
I think it's weird that I found a picture of like the subtitle that I thought this had.
Oh yeah, we had that whole conversation about that.
Yeah.
So we talked about that. I think I don't remember if we talked about it on the podcast. We definitely had that conversation off air. That everyone kind of assumed Turtles 3 is called Turtles in Time.
Turtles in Time. But when you Google it on like IMDb and whatnot, you don't really see anything other than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. So
Turtles in Time is definitely the Super Nintendo game.
it is.
Yes.
Yes. And I want to say it's probably a comic book arc as well. I want to say Mike Bradley was saying that it's an actual story arc in the comic book. But I can't remember particularly.
I'm also going to point out quickly, so the main picture for this film on IMDb right now, the tagline, not the subtitle, but a poster tagline, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Turtles Are Back, ellipses, in time. So it does appear there. However, on the same poster at the very top of it, it states, Ancient Japan, 1593, without a map, without a clue, without a pizza. Very clearly in the opening scene of this movie, it establishes that it is 1603.
Oh my god, I never put that together. That's hilarious.
There was not a lot of attention to detail and care.
Someone got paid for this shit.
Given.
That's what irritates me.
I did look into this, and just enough people have called it the Turtles in Time that is now its subtitled is that sometimes. Like not officially, but if you read about it, like enough people have just said it. That's what it is. That it's become a thing now.
This
like,
is gonna be that whole like live, die, repeat type of thing. For
Yeah.
that
No,
movie,
this is
isn't
more Bernstein.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
So, anyways, this is Turtles in Time
Okay. I just wanted to...
officially.
Well, yeah, because you
Speak
sent us
about
the
it
picture, Andy.
because-
We kept talking about it being. We thought it was just Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Right,
We've
exactly.
come to the conclusion that it was not Turtles in Time as the subtitle, and then
correct.
you sent a picture from what, Comcast?
Yeah, I looked it up on Comcast to see if I could watch it for free on Comcast, and I couldn't. I mean, I had to pay a bunch of money for it, so I just watched it on HBO Max. But I was like, "Holy fuck, there it is! I knew it! I knew it!" You know, like I was like, "Jess, put that back up. I'm going to take a picture with my cell phone. I'm going to send it to the guys on Discord." And she's like,
Yeah,
"What?"
because the
I'm like,
picture
"This-"
very clearly says Turtles in
Turtles
Time
in
under
Time.
Turtles.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like so excited. She's like, "You're weird," but
Point
It's like
made.
It's
yeah.
like a warped version of the Mandela effect.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna start wrapping up with our questions here. So the question to pose to everybody: does this movie hold up, and do you think it ever held up?
Who do you want to go first?
Well, you asked Josh. We'll go with you first.
No and no.
Any elaboration or on to the next one?
If listeners have seen, if anybody has actually seen this again after being more than 10 years old and you disagree with me, come at me, bro.
You just dude broed him.
Andy, what do you think?
No and no. I remember disliking this movie when it came out. When I saw it, I'm assuming I saw it in the theater. That's just an assumption.
Yeah.
I may not have. Maybe I saw it on like HBO or something like that. But I remember seeing it once, horribly disliking it, like really bad. And then like giving it another chance to be like, maybe it's not that bad because maybe I just watched like the first one and the second one again. I'm like, okay, let's just do the whole fucking trilogy. And then I was like, oh, yep, nope, still fucking terrible.
Ian, what do you think?
Oh, hell yeah. This is Turtles personified. The jokes suck. The fighting gets progressively better each time. But at the end of the day, I don't know why we're here.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna agree with the other two. It does not hold up. I don't think it ever really held up. I feel like I remember again liking it as a kid, but it's just like at that stage where you liked everything as a kid because it had something you enjoyed in it. So I like the Turtles. Turtles were in a movie, so hey, it's good. But yeah, looking back as an adult, no, I don't think this was ever good, and I feel bad for my parents if they took me to see this movie and I dragged them to see it a couple times because this would be want to poke your eyes out for an adult.
When I was working at the movie theater a few years ago, there was a movie out called Monster Trucks about
I remember that.
literally monsters that somehow like took refuge and somehow then ended up like controlling trucks. And I
But
was
not monster trucks?
yeah, I think
Like
they
regular
were
trucks?
mostly they were monster trucks already to help
Okay, was
complete
Bigfoot
it.
in
But
it?
I didn't actually see it.
Fuck. Okay.
But
This is important, Josh.
at one night while we had this movie for 2 or 3 weeks, I think I was taking tickets this particular night, and a dad who needs to have like a Dad of the Week award for this was bringing his like I don't know 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid. He could have been 15. I can't tell the ages anymore, whatever. But this is what the kid wanted to see, and he was bringing his son to the movies. And as we're taking the tickets, they got their popcorn, they're ready to go, and we direct them. Okay, it's down this direction. Good. He's like, all right, buddy, come on, let's go see the worst movie ever made. Knew
At least he was
100%.
excited about it.
Yeah, knew 100% how shit it was gonna be, but he's being a good dad, taking his son.
That's right.
No, that's
The
that's
kid's
the
gonna have
third
a good
time
time.
he's seen it.
Yeah. The kid's gonna have a good time, right? So that's kind of how I'm feeling that our generation may have felt. These are our parents taking us. It's like maybe afterward
Right.
you realize like, oh man, all right, it makes.
Yes.
There's Brian. Okay, he's smiling. That's fine.
Right. Yeah, I think
We're
that was
gonna have
enough
to
for the
talk
parents.
to his
Yeah.
teachers and see if we need to put him in different classes.
For me, that movie was Milo and Otis, the movie about the cat and the pug.
Oh, yeah.
I was obsessed with that movie. My parents take me to it, and they still tell stories about how fucking terrible that movie was.
You've scarred them. You've made an
I
impression.
did, yeah. I made them buy I believe I had the VHS and everything, and they were like, "Oh God,
Oh, so
This
you
one
loved
again.
it.
so boring." And I've watched it since, and I'm like, "Wow, this is fucking boring."
All right, so we're going to get to our ratings out of 10. So again, I'm going to refresh with the Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic ratings. So Rotten Tomato, the movie is currently sitting at a critic rating of 23% and an audience of 34%. Metacritic is a little bit higher, Metascore at 40, user score 5.3. Do you agree, disagree with those scores, and what is your rating out of 10? Andy, we'll start with you.
Say the first one again.
For Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah,
Critic 23, audience 34.
I agree.
Okay.
I think the other one is probably a little inflated, for my opinion. And if you recall, I think I rated Secret of the Ooze pretty high. It was, to me, that was the peak of the Turtles for me. And this is down the well, Lassie can't find him kind of shit. Like, I would say I'm right in the middle of that. I would give this a 3.
Okay. Josh, do you agree with those scores, and what do you rate it?
I am with Andy. I definitely agree more with the scores from Rotten Tomatoes. Before I will share some reviews that I came across. These are currently posted on the Wikipedia page for this movie, but let's take them for granted for the moment. The Los Angeles Times, at the time reviewing this movie, their reviewer says, despite mild praise for the look of the film, the reviewer called the first film a fluke hit, which I would disagree with, but called this third film sequel hell. I think this could be encompassed, though, by James Baradinelli's review. He gave it 1 out of 4 stars, citing, quote, any adults accompanying their kids will have to invent new and interesting ways to stay awake. Not only is this movie aimed at young children, the script could have been written by them.
Wow, that is like spot on.
That, like, dude pulled no punches in that.
Yeah.
Ian, what is the lowest I've given something?
It's always a good question to ask.
Oh, 3.5.
Was that Bloodshot or Venom?
It's Return of Swamp Thing.
Return of Swamp Thing. Okay. I did make the point that Swamp Thing looked better in that than these costumes. So, yeah, I'll go with a 3 on this as well.
I still feel like that's generous. I really expected you to go lower than that.
I was considering it, but it's sort of the same reason I will, like, it's really hard for me to give something like an 8.5, a 9, 9.5. I always need room to go up. In this case, I'm leaving room to go down.
Fair. Ian, how do you feel about the ratings that were on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, and what do you give it out of 10?
As we always know, these people get it exactly right. They know exactly what they're doing. There's no bias. There's no magic manipulation happening. This is just purely accurate information. This is easily the best Turtles movies we've ever watched. Comparatively to, like, the other two, there's, like, enough scenes without turtles that you can get through it. You can make it through this movie without hating yourself. You're like, okay, here's some normal people tell normal people jokes. It's like you get the scenes with the Japanese warriors in the future, and it's like, okay, it's fish out of water, Encino Man shit. I get it. That's funny. I can work with that. You get Walker, like, just fucking dominating anything they throw at him line wise. He's like, I got a take for that. So this, of course, is getting a 4.5.
Wow.
My highest Turtles movie.
I cannot wait till we get to the back half of these Turtles movies. I really want to see what you think of these, Ian. Like, I'm very curious. If this is the bar, I need to see where we go from here.
I'm curious about the next movies that we're going to watch. Well, aside from the next one, which I think is the animated one,
Yes.
I have not seen any of the newer live action ones, so
Neither has Josh.
Pretty curious.
I haven't
about
seen the
these.
animated either.
Oh, you haven't seen the animated one either?
No.
Oh, okay. I knew for a fact that you were staying away from the rebooted ones because Michael Bay's name has been attached to them, so I knew you were swearing those off like the plague.
And because they look freaking weird. Yeah, both.
Yeah, the turtles look super weird in those.
This is sort of getting our hairs ahead of ourselves, but the turtle design for me for those movies was something that I was like, what the fuck are they doing here? But having seen the movies, I don't think it looks as bad as we think. Or at least me personally. I actually come to really appreciate those designs and kind of actually like them.
Okay.
The more I've after watching both of those. And not to bury the lead, but I think the one we would end on for the Turtles franchise, which is that second movie, I think is a really decent movie, and I'm hoping that we are all pleasantly surprised with that movie. But again, that's getting ahead of ourselves. For me, for this movie, I agree more, I think, with Josh and Andy that I would fall more in line with the Rotten Tomatoes ratings. I'm trying to remember, like, sort of where I want to fall with this one. It's definitely going to be my lowest rated out of the Turtles movies. I think I had Turtles 1 rated higher than 2, but I think they were both pretty up there. There's not a lot to like here. I can pick out very little things here and there. Like, Ian and I sort of talked about the fight scenes. I think wide shots for being able to see the turtles actually fight people, I appreciate. Using weapons in fights, I appreciate. More Casey Jones is always good. But the story itself is crap. Oh, and the guy that played Walker, I thought he more or less stole the show as far as like line delivery and like someone actually trying to act in a movie. I thought he did pretty good.
Because he was the only one trying to act.
Yes, true.
He also might have been the only one classically trained.
Or trained.
Period. But yeah, I think I'm still gonna end up on the low side. I think I'm gonna give this a 2.5 for this one.
Wow.
Yeah. It's I always come down to story. I think if the story can really hold me, but there's no story here. Like, this is just move along from point A to point B.
There's a magic egg timer that sends people into the past.
It might be enough for you, Ian. I need a little bit more for my story. Okay, so that's where we end for Turtles 3. It's time for us to go to the Wheel of Fate.
The Wheel of Fate!
So as I mentioned earlier, like I do every time we do one of these, we're changing up the wheel a bit over the last couple weeks. So we're doing 3 franchises and 3 standalone movies now. Again, the idea has always been to try to keep a variety going forward. And again, if we need to revamp and change some things, we can always adapt that sometime later. So we're gonna let this ride for a little while and see how this goes. Since we went back to the last Turtles movie last week after the kitchen, so we went to Turtles 3, got picked. The wheel stay the same. That's another franchise that we got picked last week, so franchise stays on the board until we get through it. So as we mentioned, we still have 3 other Turtle movies to go, so until that all the Turtles movies are we've seen, it stays on the board. Our 3 standalone movies for right now are Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, Supergirl, and Speed Racer. Our 3 franchises, Turtles is still there, Ghost Rider is on the board, and Ghost in the Shell is on the board. So now is the point in time when I share this for these guys. All right, so everybody can see the wheel, correct?
The wheel.
Is that a yes? Is that
Yeah.
Andy saying yes, you see it? Okay.
The
Do we have any guesses or predictions or, what you would like to see?
I think it's more hopes than anything.
Ghost
Yeah.
Rider?
So we have Ghost in the Shell, obviously, from Ian. Ghost Rider from Andy.
I wouldn't mind cracking into Ghost Rider, but I kind of want to hit one of the singles. Though I don't know how excited I am for it. Well, Speed Racer, maybe.
I feel a little bit better about this, like the stuff we have on the wheel now. Like the kitchen's gone, Swamp Thing's gone. Like we're reading through some of the stuff.
Oh, nice.
Sorry, Valerian. Valerian hits it. So again, we've talked about this before. This is a movie I have not seen.
All right.
So I am actually very curious about this. So we'll see how this goes. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it, but I'm definitely curious. So Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets is our next movie.
Well, I will say it's no Fifth Element, but I think it has its perks.
And I feel like that's sort of what I, in my mind, has always been expecting for this movie was like another Fifth Element, but I feel like the reviews coming out of it were not that, or at least it didn't get enough praise as like the Fifth Element. But I guess the Fifth Element didn't really get praised when it first came out either, right?
No,
That's more of a cult movie.
It's more of a cult movie now, yeah.
So I don't know if we've hit cult status with Valerian, or if people just don't like it and that's about it. I guess we'll tackle that when we get there.
It's either got cult status or everyone hates it.
Yeah, there's no in between. That's it. All right, so that's what we're going to look forward to for the next Rewind Theater, and that's it for us. If you've enjoyed the show, you can please support us. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Give us a share on social media. Make sure to follow or subscribe to the show wherever you find a podcast. We are on Spotify, iTunes, Google, Anchor, Stitcher. Hopefully, anywhere you're listening to us, you'll find us there. As always, you can find us on Facebook. Search Bry Guy into Super Friends, or go to facebook.com/BryGuySuperFriends. You can send us questions, comments, topic suggestions, any of that stuff there. Shoot us an email, bryguysuperfriends@gmail.com. If you've sent us an email in the past, I haven't read it yet. It's still going to sit there until I get to it, which will probably be a while down the road. Hit us up on Twitter @BGSuperFriends. Feel free to follow me on Twitch. It's Jedi Bry Guy, Jedi with an I, Bry with a Y. Shout out, Andy.
So hot.
And wherever you decide to, whenever we decide to do another live show, that will be there. If I decide to start streaming any more gameplay, that will also be there. So follow along if you want to keep updated with any of that. And on behalf of Andy, Ian, Josh, and myself, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
I'll be back.